Hi. A couple of days ago, we were having a discussion, and Rohan over here, he managed to convince me to buy an Apple TV. So I thought, why not take this to the world and talk to them about why everyone should buy an Apple TV? But then there are some concerns over here, especially if you're buying the TV in India, considering that some features are not available in the country at all. But first, let's just ask Rohan why he bought an Apple TV and how has his experience been so far. So, Rohan.
Yeah, so I think if you remember our conversation, I told you that I'd been a Chromecast user for a good 2 years. I think that was my a Chromecast was connected to a television which had no other input for entertainment, right? So there was no set-top box. It was just a TV with a Chromecast, and that's how I used to use it for a good 2 years until the Apple TV 4th Gen launched, and I looked at it as while the Chromecast was great for streaming YouTube videos or Plex or what have you. The way I looked at Apple TV 4th Gen was that it was a natural progression. It was a very nice upgrade to the experience that I was already having with Chromecast, which was fair, but there were some really disappointing things about the Chromecast, which I'll get into. So yeah, all in all, it was an upgrade, and I think being one of the most reasonably priced Apple products. I mean, and you can't
that's a
say
good
that
point, yeah.
you can't say that about like most Apple products, right? So at rupees 13,500 for the 32 GB version, uh, I think it's a fair purchase for anybody who has a non-smart TV and wants to make that TV smart. I think it's much better decision to just buy a dumb TV and hook up a device like an Apple TV to it instead of a custom interface that the manufacturer bakes in.
I should ideally ask you the first question that comes to anybody's mind. That is, do you need an Apple product to connect to the Apple TV, or can you use, say, any device in your house, like,
Right.
say, an Android phone or an Android tablet?
So an Apple TV 4th generation comes with something called as the Siri Remote, right? It's a completely independent device in the sense that it does not need another Apple device to be controlled, and that forms one of the most primal differentiating factors between, say, a Chromecast, which costs probably like 6-7 times less as compared to an Apple TV, right? But that's what you get when you buy this. So you get a Siri remote, which is basically a remote with 4 physical buttons and a touchpad for navigating through the interface. And what do you say? That's the primary mode of controlling the Apple TV. Having said that, you can, if you happen to have an iPhone or an iPad, you can install the Apple TV remote app and also control it via that.
Yeah, so one of the main reasons why I hesitated so much, when I was thinking about whether I should get an Apple TV or not, is the Siri remote. First of all, Siri on Apple TV is not available in India. That's a major downside for me. Even though Siri does not work as well, but all of the headline features for the Apple TV, whatever they talk about at the keynote, most of them are Siri related. Like show me some movies from the 80s and show me play a movie via Netflix or whatever it is.
Yeah.
If that doesn't work in India, that's one major downside for me. Second thing is the remote itself. I mean, don't you think it's a little hard to tell which side is up and which side is down? And it also feels a bit too fragile for me because every time I look at it, I feel like if I drop this remote, the glass on it will just shatter and it will become a mess, which is very expensive to replace.
So, yeah, I agree with you. In fact, that Siri, the lack of it is not, it's one of the limiting factors of using an Apple TV in India. In fact, a couple of people I know who use the 4th gen product have changed their region to the United States just so that they can use Siri, which I think is very cumbersome, and it just like messes up everything else. If you have multiple Apple devices, you can't. Then you'll have to subscribe to Apple Music, US pricing, and it just causes complications the way I
It
look at
also
it.
messes up your Apple Music library.
Right, so
among
I
other
wouldn't do
things, yeah.
that. So, having said that, when it launched, the Apple TV didn't even have a voice input for search fields, which they enabled in subsequent software updates.
Yeah, imagine typing with that remote.
Yeah, so typing with the remote is definitely not a very intuitive or easy way of doing it, right? But here's the thing, most of the interaction that happens with the Apple TV happens via click and swipe. So let's put it this way: like when you're watching Netflix, right? Netflix's app is smart enough to pop up the suggestions that you want to watch. Like say for example you're watching a TV, say for example you're watching a TV show, right? And it'll tell you to continue watching this. So every time say I want to catch up on Narcos, right? So every day the routine is just to click, turn it on, go to the Netflix app and say continue watching. It just takes it from there. So somewhat mitigated. Anyway, moving on. You also mentioned that the fragility of the Siri remote, and I agree that it's a little, it's small that it can be easily dropped from the hand. And to tell you the truth, my Apple TV Siri remote has been dropped a good 10 times by now, and I can see dings on the side, but fortunately it still works. There was an incident that happened very recently where my drink, basically a glass of whiskey and soda, entirely fell on the Apple TV remote. And I thought that, wow, that's going to be like 6,500 down the drain, because that's how much it costs if you want to buy a replacement, which is nuts, because
Yeah.
that's like almost close to half the cost of the box itself.
Yeah, might as well get a new Apple TV
Right.
along with
So
it. Yeah.
having said that, fortunately for me, it just worked. So I don't know if it's one of those things where Apple is like secretly waterproofing devices like they did with the 6S, but they didn't say it.
Yeah.
And ultimately,
Maybe it doesn't meet certain standards, but
Certain
probably
standards.
it can resist certain spills.
it certainly did resist a glass of whiskey and soda for sure. So that did
I suppose
happen.
that's nice to hear, but then yeah, once again, I mean, I'm still not very convinced about the remote. Maybe I'll get a case or something if I'm buying for the remote itself, so that the nice looking remote doesn't totally shatter or get these dents.
True, but having said, I think it's fairly sturdy because it's made out of aluminum at the back, and the glass portion is only the bottom half of the front surface, and the rest is touchpad, right? So it's not as fragile as you think, but yes, there is always that concern. And in fact, because more than just breaking, because it's so small, right? It's easy to like kind of
Yeah.
get hidden between the crevices between the
Sofa,
sofa,
yeah.
yeah. So that is a problem.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, when I was thinking about this whole thing, like, will the remote be a problem? Will I be okay with it or not? The first thing that struck me was obviously the fragility, which we spoke about at length. Second thing I was thinking about was that if you think about an iPhone, you pick it up a million times a day, but then 90% of the time, maybe even 99% of the time, it's only you who's going to be picking it up. So you are going to be extremely careful with it. But with something like a Siri remote, which is like a remote for Apple TV, everybody in the house is going to be picking it up. Everybody in the house is going to be handling it, which leads to chances of it getting lost or it getting damaged.
Right. Also, spoiler alert: when other people come over and say, if they have kids, then yeah, my heart is like my heart beats faster as a kid is trying to an innocent kid is trying to play a game on the Apple TV,
Yeah.
using the remote.
So does the remote have a strap of some sort for your wrist when you're playing games?
So I don't think it doesn't come with one in the box, but I think there are third-party straps available which plug into the lightning port at the bottom and have a lanyard sort of. So there are those accessories available.
Yeah, that would be essential if you're giving it to a kid. Yeah. So I mean, now that you mentioned gaming, I mean, this is another topic that is very close to my heart. Gaming on iOS is something that I do almost every day. There are plenty of awesome games which are like nearing console quality on iOS. I wouldn't say they are console quality yet, far from it. Such as, I mean, let's take an example, Ocean Horn. So
Right.
anybody who's Ocean Horn is essentially a very nice Zelda clone for iOS. It's not as good as Zelda, obviously, but it comes close. So a game like that, playing that on the Apple TV with a controller plugged in, great. But if you're playing it with the remote, I would be a little uncomfortable doing that, because the actions like swipe and all that, interacting with that, easy on an iPad, easy on an iPhone, but using the Apple TV remote, it'll be hard. But obviously developers optimize these games, so I'm not even sure if Ocean Horn is there on the Apple TV. Games like Badland I guess is a very good experience on the Apple TV because it just works, right? The control scheme is just suited to that. But if you look at it by and large, I don't think the Apple TV is the gaming console killer that some people hoped it would be. It's more like a I play games casually sometimes, and I want it on a big screen, so let's see how it goes.
That's exactly what it is for me, at least. Because and certainly, I think it would have been outlandish to call it a gaming console killer, right? Because at the end of the day, it is almost now what, a 3 generation old chipset. Like it has the A8, which is the same chip that's there on the iPhone 6.
Yeah, I mean, without really
So
interrupting you, at this point, I should just mention that the chipset is old and they don't update it every year.
yeah,
So, even if you want to play the latest games at any given point, then there's a risk. I mean, they don't really update it every year, so there's like a risk of it slowing down or sometimes not getting the latest features in games.
sure,
So, yeah.
sure. But let's put it this way. Now, they wouldn't want to update it every year because anyway, I don't think there is a market where people are going to change the TV boxes on a yearly or a bi-yearly basis, right? Like how people change phones once in every 2 years. I think the way I look at it, I think I would only want to change this box once the software just becomes too slow or I miss out on some really big feature which say the next generation has, which probably comes out, I don't know, maybe around the 27th event, maybe they do a refresh, maybe they don't, I don't know. Yeah. So, but having said that, yeah, you're right. Like you won't get the latest and greatest of iOS.
I mean, the only reason I bring this up is if you look at the performance graphs that Apple likes to tout at their keynote events, every year you see at least a 20% jump in CPU speed,
Yeah.
and at least a 20% jump in graphics performance.
Absolutely.
And this is just like the bare minimum I'm saying. In some years we've seen as much as 50% jumps. So when that happens, it negatively impacts gaming.
Absolutely, absolutely. But here's the thing, right? The kind of games that I play on Apple TV, I think it's not the high-end games that that are really the popular ones. Even if you look at the titles on the popular titles on the App Store, right, on tvOS. It's the fun game. So basically, there's a game of tennis, say for example, whereby the Siri Remote can be used the same way a Nintendo Wii Remote, if you recall
Yeah,
those
so
days.
that's where if the strap is not there,
Yeah,
once
sure,
again, I'd be really
but
concerned.
it's a load of fun playing the games that you generally are used to playing on a small screen on the big screen. So, for example, a great game for the small screen when experienced on the big screen, an example of which I can give you is Asphalt 8. So Asphalt 8 is fun on the mobile phone.
Yeah.
It's a lot more fun on the big screen. And for a guy like me, I'm not really a gamer, right? Like the last game that I really remember playing was like Mafia 1 or was it Max Payne 2? I don't remember. Because
It's
that
been
was
too
around,
long,
yeah, it's
yeah.
been too long. That's like more than 10 years ago. And ever since then, I've resisted the temptation to buy a gaming console simply because the upfront cost that one has to shell out for a premium title game, I just don't see myself justifying paying that price, like 2,500 to 3,500
Yeah,
for
sure.
a
I mean,
game.
the Apple TV is not a device targeted at gamers, but then since the price bracket is roughly the same, 13,500 or so for the 32 GB Apple TV, and 64 GB is about 17,500 or
Yeah.
so. If you look at it, PlayStation 3 is available in the same price bracket, around 15,000 if you pick it up at the right time. And you can easily swap out the 12 GB hard drive that comes in the base variant and put in a 500 GB hard drive. That's what I did. And if you look at PlayStation 3 games, Call of Duty Ghost was available for something like 99 rupees on sale recently. Most games will be available in the 500 to 750 rupees range. And all of these games are fantastic, like some of the best hits of the previous generations. All of them are available at really low prices. So that is one advantage for a PlayStation 3. And all these games, I would say 90% of them, even though they might not look as good, they are still better games than what you find on iOS, because
Certainly.
sheer amount of depth that is there in these
Because
games.
those games they are gaming consoles. They're
Yeah.
designed specifically for a purpose.
Yeah, and the console ships with a proper controller as well
Right.
for you
So
to play these
that's
games.
where I'll interject, because Apple TV, people don't buy an Apple TV because they want to play games. People buy Apple TV because they want to make their dumb TV smarter, and gaming is just like a bonus thing on the side that you get.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And with the
So,
PlayStation 3, if you have the 500 GB hard drive, you can just as easily, streaming Netflix doesn't even need any hard drive space. You can just as easily load it up with movies and play them. It's a very nice Blu-ray player as well. So there are many advantages to.
true. Does
to
it have
having-
Hotstar?
Probably not. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So when Tim Cook says that the future of TV is apps, I get that now, because the new services that are coming up, right? There is a good chance that Apple TV, running tvOS, which is sort of like an extension to iOS, right, on the big screen, is going to get these access to these apps. So, for example, a Hotstar membership of rupees 200 a month is very reasonable to pay for all HBO content, right, and a lot of other interesting content.
Yeah, you get live sports as well on Hotstar.
Absolutely. So that is again where I would, the way you're putting it is the PS3 is a great gaming console with media streaming facilities, and the way I'm looking at it is an Apple TV is a great media streamer and a smart device with some gaming ability. So that's a different points of view. So I'll just quickly jump into my reasoning behind why I upgraded from a Chromecast to this, right? So although Chromecast, like I said, is one of the cheapest ways to make your dumb TV smarter. It's not without its faults. I'll give you a very simple example. You're playing a YouTube video, right? You're casting a YouTube video from your phone onto the screen, and you get a phone call. Now, on an Android phone, or I'm not too sure about an iPhone, but on an Android phone for certain, when a call comes, your screen is basically frozen. So you can't pull down the notification bar as the call screen is ringing, right? You have to take an action before you can do anything else.
Yeah, it's the same on iPhone. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, and the video is playing. There's no way of pausing it. So you have to like basically take the call, tell the person, hey, just hold on for a second.
Hey, I'm watching a movie.
Just 1 second. And then, pull the notification bar down, press the pause button, and then continue a conversation. And this would happen to me often. Like my mom, say for example, would just walk into the room and she would be like, Rohan, I'm like, wait, and then unlock and pause. It's just annoying because we're used to controlling television without having to look down at the display, and that's the reason why these touchscreen remotes concepts that ever came out, they never really worked, because remotes are meant to be like they're meant to
tactile
be
feel
the
of the
tactile
button.
feel of the buttons is what makes the remote work, right?
Yeah, I mean, in my home remote, at least I can easily tell which buttons are for going to the previous channel,
Exactly.
next channel, and all that.
Exactly.
Just because each button's shape is different.
Absolutely.
Yeah, muscle memory is what guides me there.
That is exactly what happens here. So when I get a phone call, Apple TV remote, just hit pause or just scrub to the next part of the video without having to look down. That was one of the big improvements in experience, I would say.
Also, I mean, in terms of build quality, the Apple TV is, I mean, I don't own it, so I guess you are the one who should talk about it. It's small, portable, and does it, like, does dust and all affect it, and does it get, like, scratches and all of that, like the jet black iPhone?
No, not at all. So, I mean, mine has been lying out in the open without any cover or any cloth, to protect it from dust or anything like that.
Trust me, if I buy one, it will have a cloth protecting it, like, from all sides.
Yeah, it'll probably have an aluminum case of its own, I'm sure, if you
it's a museum.
Yeah. So, but having said that, no, I mean, because it's eating dust and it works just fine. So, no complaints there.
All right. And what about connectivity options?
So, one of the interesting connectivity options with the Apple TV is its support to route audio via Bluetooth. So, I happen to have a very old sound dock, which I've made Bluetooth compatible using an adapter. My television, as funny as it sounds, does not have a 3.5 mm out. So, using the Apple TV, I was simply able to connect the audio route via Bluetooth to the sound dock, so that whenever I want to enjoy movies, and the sound dock has like much better sound than what the TV speakers have, and the ability to switch between those modes is very, very simple. You just have to pull down on the touchpad while a video is playing, and you can just change the audio source. And there is zero lag. Like, it's absolutely because I've seen that some Bluetooth, when I've tried doing this with some other Bluetooth devices, there is always a lag between the video and the audio being played, and this has like zero lag, which is amazing. You can also use that same Bluetooth connectivity. Say for example, you have a pair of Bluetooth headphones and you want to enjoy a movie, but you don't want to disturb somebody else in the room. You can just pair it with your Bluetooth headset and just for a private listening session. So that also comes in really handy. And yeah, it's got Wi-Fi. There's apps like VLC, for example. So if you want to load up a video file and play it on the Apple TV, you can do that by installing the app, and there's a remote access using the browser. You can go to any browser on a computer.
Yeah, you just type a URL.
Type in the URL and just drag and drop the file and just
That's exactly how it works on the iPad as well.
Yeah, so exactly that.
Yeah, all right. So I guess I started out as somebody who was very unconvinced about the Apple TV, and I suppose by the end of this discussion, I am convinced, and maybe I will buy it soon. Now it's time to save money. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button below and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Gadgets360.